This Week in 40K.
Good morning. Welcome to This Week in 40K. He's Billy and I'm Colin. The show that is neither grim nor dark. However, I personally am going to struggle with that this morning. But Billy and I are going to talk about that, and his positivity is going to be the beacon, the lighthouse in the dark that we need in this time of the grim dark. But first, I have to do a weird task. So I have a fenced-in backyard. It's fairly big. And yesterday and the day before, we've had a family of deer, 5-6 deer in our backyard eating. And they're they're eating plants that I care about, but they're deer and it's cute. Happens. What, Billy?
That happens. I actually have a trick for that when you get back.
But it's fine. Like, I don't mind that they're eating our plants, I don't think. They've been pushed out. There's a lot of new construction recently in the forested areas around us. So I think they've literally been pushed down to us to eat. That said, we like to keep the gate closed. And I closed the gate last night after the deer had been in the yard. And my wife is like, well, we like to keep the gate closed because we have dogs. And my wife's like, deer can jump really high. They'll jump over the fence. It'll be fine. And I'm sitting here and there's a baby deer running around in the yard next to me without any of its family. And I have a heartbroken amount of anxiety that I have trapped this deer in my yard. So I'm going to go open the gate and presume that I have saved the world. And then I'll come back. But while I'm gone, Billy, why don't you talk about getting to play 10th edition for a minute or two, and I'll come right back.
For those of you who ever have a similar problem, chili pepper flakes are very good at deterring deer without hurting them. They don't like the taste, and then you end up with chili pepper plants in your yard. I'll tell Colin that when he gets back. Over the weekend, I both RTT'd and sort of played in... I RTT'd. I TO'd and sort of played in an RTT up at one of our local stores, Gamescape North. Lovely group of people. The wonderful Tyler Bortel from this network was there. My buddy Trent, who I talked about in previous episodes, myself, are the names that anyone other than those who were there might recognize. Because I was TOing and because I don't think the list was going to last very long, I brought the most god-awful, horrible Eldar concoction I could come up with, and it was exactly what I thought. When I say I only sort of played, I took the bye in round one because there was an odd number of people and I was TOing, and that seemed like the right thing to do. In round two, I was paired against Knights, and we laughed the entire game, but dear God, calling it a game would be disingenuous. I did lose a Wraith Knight, and that was mostly because I was sloppy and didn't care. I tabled him on turn 3, and it would have been turn 2 if I was brave enough to keep my Wraith Knight out and remembered to shoot all my guns in the second round. And then round 3, I played Tyler Bortel, and I lost because Tyler is a member of Team America, and he's playing Gene Stealer Cult, and he knows what he's doing, and I very much don't, and had the brain of a father of a 3-month-old baby. It helped that we got Dawn of War, that he got defender roll for first placement, and that he went first, and that I screwed up deployment. I could have controlled the screwing up deployment, and if I did, I still probably win. But it was interesting. So Colin, just to catch you up, chili pepper flakes are great to stopping deer from eating your own plants without hurting them, and you end up with chili pepper plants. And I went over what happens when you bring a really horrible Eldar list, like horrible for others, Eldar list to an RTT that you're in charge of.
Yeah, that does seem like an interesting decision that you made.
I knew that there were going to be a lot of judge calls, and I was going to be the person fielding them. And so I needed my games to end in under an hour. And I was largely successful at both of those tasks.
Okay, great. So I think that this episode should now be called This Week in 40K, 10th edition, Oh Dear.
Ooh, I like that.
Because of
the deer. Because of 10th edition.
Yes. I think that the deer are going to be able to leave safely. Now, they could have been fine this whole time, but the amount of anxiety I was feeling over it was very high. So we've resolved that.
This is good.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to go right into our top story.
Okay.
Yep.
Our top story.
Our top story is that the community is upset about 10th edition.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important topic. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that as our top story. And then in What's New, we'll talk about all the things that are new, because there was a lot in the past 7 days. And then we'll talk about the two kind of biggish 10th edition 40K tournaments, 2-day 40K tournaments from this weekend. So to bring anybody up to speed that is living firmly and thoroughly under a giant boulder, the community's mad. The armies are not balanced even a little bit. Some of the army's rules feel unplay tested. The core rules have a number of pretty stark problems that people are upset about. Some of which are just people being like the "I hate change, leave my things alone" people. Like the whole "I hate change, but I also demand change."
You changed my Facebook feed. I'm going to delete Facebook. Oh wait, right. I'm never going to do that.
Not even that though. There's this that would be like if you're sitting around in Facebook being like, I wish they'd redo the user interface. Oh, they redid the user interface. I'm out. Like literally 40K people want change, but then are upset when it happens. And that's okay. And that's all right. That's the community. Okay. A lot of the things that people are upset about are fair. Towering is a problem, and dev wounds, and especially in Eldar, is a problem. Like there are problems. What, Billy?
I disagree on towering.
Okay. Well, we're not going to debate that at this exact moment.
Okay.
So the community's bad, and I'm at a weird place because this show is neither grim nor dark. And we have committed to be upbeat and positive about 40K. This is a morning show. It's not about being upset, but I'm going to be honest with the people that I am upset. Upset is kind of a description of the emotion. I would say disappointed is a better one. I am someone who is by default positive. I am an optimistic sort that is typically positive, and I do think that the change that's happened to 10th edition will be good in the long run. The change that's happened to 40K. But currently, I'm feeling beaten down. I'm frustrated. I am. I have had a number of games of 10th edition that weren't fun for reasons that could have been solved by playtesting. I went to an RTT on Saturday, and it was a mixture of, I had 2 games where I blew my opponent off the table so aggressively that there was nothing. There was no interest.
It wasn't a game.
No, it wasn't a game at all. Yeah. And then the middle game, I played against Knights, which we'll talk about in the What Wins tournaments. And Knights versus Genestealer Cult against my good friend Hank, when both of us were trying our best to play a really, really good game of 40K. It was hard because a number of the things that we both perceive as wrong with 10th edition 40K were on display being paraded around by our Genestealer Cult versus Knights game. And so my RTT was 2 games against newish players, like wonderful people that are super fun, but like I'm playing my first game of 10th edition, and these are the only orcs I own, so these are the orcs I've brought. It's a very different vibe than me, who's like, well, I've played 8 or 9 games of 10th edition, and I brought Genestealer Cult, which is a wild, unacceptable problem for the game that, by the way, is way more broken than I even thought it was.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't lost a game with them, but that's not super strange, right? I'd only played 3 or 4 games. And so I took Genestealer Cult, and I'm playing, and literally this is what my brain's doing on the first turn. Oh, I won. Oh, okay. I'm killing them quick enough, and I've taken the whole table, and I'm the only one that's going to score points, and the game's going to end.
Yeah.
And, oh, geez, that was... So anyways, so I had these 3 games of 40K, and the night game ended up being extremely close, but it was very frustrating for both of us. And in between games, all I heard was the community complaining. And then that night, I went online, and all I could find was the community complaining. And then I went to Discords that I'm part of, and all I could see was people complaining. And my disappointment with what my experience was like at the RTT, mixed with how negative the community's being, has made it really hard for me. I want to play Eldar. Eldar is broken beyond any recognition. I don't know when it's going to get fixed. I was hoping for this morning. We did see a kill team data slate, so balance slate this morning.
Okay.
So sometimes they do all that on the same week, but I don't know that that will be the case. So we were supposed to do Best in Faction Sunday morning, and we were supposed to talk excitedly about 10th edition because that's what the community needs. And we actually called it off because I didn't feel like I was in a good place to cover 10th edition. I just really didn't feel like that. We'll do that episode. It'll be at a different time, but Sunday was not going to be good, and I didn't want to add more negativity to the community. So I'm being honest that that's where I'm at personally. Let's counterpoint that with where Billy's at.
Right. So I really, hearing that, I wish you would come to the RTT that I ran, because there actually was a similar spread of lists to what you're describing, and in some cases played by similar caliber of players in both directions. People who are new, and instead of you playing Genestealer Cult, we had Tyler playing Genestealer Cult. I would argue that there is a similar caliber of quality of Genestealer Cult play there. The Knights players were newer than Hank, but we had Knights players, and then we had me doing horrible things with Eldar. But there were no complaints throughout the entire weekend. Everyone was smiling. When I casually tabled a Knight player in 3 turns, we had a wonderful time, and we were going to be friends after it because we were just like, this is not 40K, but sure, we get to have the story of this horrible thing that happened. And when Tyler did what he did to me with Genestealer Cult, which I agree are not an okay army, all right, that's a fun thing that they let through. Cool. And I think you just sort of have to you have to laugh at the broken and enjoy your opponent, and just realize that from my understanding, the modern approach to AAA video games is largely they release a pretty polished beta test, and then the first month it's in the wild, they fix things. Well, GW realized that they're allowed to do that by nerd community, and that's what we've got. We've got a reasonably polished beta test that we're testing, and there are some, oh my god, there is no way they actually put this Eldar army on the table and are like, yes, that's fine to go out into public. It's just not possible. But, I got to play triple Repulsor Executioner for a weekend. I have a story. It'll get fixed. I think you have to you have to start the game with, we both understand that this is kind of silly, right? Cool. We'll have fun. Winning does not matter at this point. Figuring out what we need to know about 10th edition is what matters. And then at the end of a lot of games, there's like, oh, I didn't everyone was over the course of the game coming up with, things that can advance and have assault weapons are like amazing mission playing tools. Or, wow, just it's impossible to not get cover. Or the realization that I've had, and then I found actually something kind of fun last night, is that, melee needs help. But one of the reasons it needs help is, from my opinion, there's no fights last in the game. So you don't really control who can activate, except there is Battle Shock.
Yep, that's what fight last is.
Right. And so trying to find good Battle Shock, and who kind of sort of can have good Battle Shock is a Blood Angel army. Just putting that out there. There are so you have to intentionally recalibrate where you're going to find your fun from the game. And if this kind of exploration is not where your fun is, spend some time hobbying. It's not going to be good until the rules get fixed.
What if you are frustrated and competition is what you're looking for, and you can't take a break because you do several 40K podcast shows?
Asking for a friend?
Yeah, I'm just completely hypothetical. No, I think that's all fair, Billy. I do. I think we are absolutely in a weird state where we're waiting for some sort of balance, and I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah.
I don't even think we're going to have to wait very long. I really don't. Every day I wake up and think, maybe we'll see a balance thing this morning. And like any day wouldn't surprise me. But it also wouldn't surprise me if another week goes by. But if 2 weeks go by, that would really surprise me.
And look, I will start to change my tune. In the TO pack I made for the RTT, I said, guys, the game is broken. I think a balance patch might release on day 1. And if it does, proxy rules out the window. You can proxy whatever you want. Bring the army you want. We're going to just use the rules because the game is not balanced. So I thought it was coming on Saturday. I am surprised. Every day it does not come out, I am surprised.
Yes.
Tacoma's in what, like 2 weeks?
Yeah, about that. 2.5 weeks.
Whenever the rules lock is for that, if there's not a balanced data slate, I will be one of the first people to say, I'm sorry, GW, that's unacceptable. You know that it's broken, and you're just ruining your own event. And I don't think they want to do that.
I don't think so either.
So,
yeah. But it leaves me in this place where I didn't actually enjoy playing Genestealer of Cold. They are good for the reasons for incorrect reasons.
Yep. Yes.
And I didn't enjoy playing that. So I don't think the Drukhari rules are particularly interesting. Personally, that's one of the armies I play. I don't see it. Harlequins are actually one of the things that I think GW has handled the worst out of all of this.
Yeah, they really went in the penalty box.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just that. They nearly squatted the army without saying anything.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have their own unique rules. They're not special. They're just craft rolled Eldar units that aren't as good as the other units. Like, that's awful. So, anyways, so looking at the armies that I play, I want to play Eldar, but I can't. And I don't know what to prep for Tacoma, like, at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
And my brain is one that looks to 40K as it'd be really great to have this social experience. At the same time, I would like to have a really interesting game for my brain to focus on. And if I don't get that, I don't enjoy myself. So yeah, I'm in a weird spot. That said, I agree with Billy that things are only going to get better from here. Frankly, they have to get better from here.
Yeah.
I think the community is being fair. I think that a number of these things are, in fact, not okay.
Oh, yeah.
And if I were making my list of what needs to be changed in 10th edition, which I didn't do because every other show is doing that, and we are not that show. We are not the negative
not that
show.
hard to come up with. It's the same.
No.
It's like 5 things that are just so obvious.
But here's my thing. Army balance is like number 7. Like, I have core things I want changed in the game before we even get to how broken individual armies are.
Although I think fixing some of those core things might help a lot with some armies.
Could be.
Yeah.
Unmodified or modified 6s being crits is a very easy change, right?
What do you mean?
Make it so that fate dice don't.
Yeah.
So fate dice don't trigger dev wounds.
Yeah.
So anybody who can just have a 6 doesn't trigger dev wounds. Like,
they did that at Boise, which we'll talk about in a second.
Man, yeah, and if there's ever anything that upsets Colin about 40K, it's all the tournaments having long lists of house rules.
Yep, agreed.
At which point we're playing wildly different games of 40K, and there's nothing really to learn from those tournaments. Okay, here we go. We're going to go be positive now.
What's new?
A lot. And there's one topic mixed in this that I'm going to have a hard time being positive about.
I'll cover you. I'm pretty positive about pretty much all of this.
So I'm going to weave it in, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
First of all, there's the app.
Yeah, the app is good. It's not perfect, but it's good.
It's not perfect, no. Yeah, so the app, the search ability, so the app is out. You can download it for those that, again, giant boulder underneath their house. So the app allows you to make armies. It allows you to look up any rules, and the search functionality is great.
Yeah.
The search functionality in the last app was the main thing I didn't like about it. I didn't need it for army list building. Battlescribe is not being updated anymore.
Yep.
And they do not understand how to put 10th edition rules into it because different people do the rules than do the structure of the app. So we need an app that makes armies, and that's what they've given us. It is far from perfect, in my opinion, but it is significantly better than anything else they've shown us.
And just as someone who had to read a heck ton of army lists, I personally, I'm not saying that this is the output of army lists that I would have chosen, because it's still a lot busy, but it's a lot better than what Battlescribe was. I will know how many models were in a unit.
Yeah. It's actually, one of my criticisms is I think they could have done a much better job on the army export.
Yeah.
I don't think it's particularly easy to read. Personally, I'm not comparing it to Battlescribe because I think Battlescribe's dead.
Yeah.
I'm just considering whether or not it's hard to read. Also, Genestealer Cult's broken in the app, which isn't really acceptable because it means that nobody tried it. Like, you put in characters and it says war gear wrong, and you're like, but this character doesn't have war gear options. Like, it just basically assaults you with error messages that don't make any sense if you make a Genestealer Cult army specifically.
Yeah, there's some stuff in Marines lists too. They don't really understand how Assault Marines war gear. There's some war gear stuff that needs to be fixed. Double check against what it says in the book, the index, the digital index, which I actually have interesting things to share about that too. But yeah, the app is a step forward from, I would argue, anything we've had in the past. There are more steps in the future, but I didn't let myself hope that it would work this well.
Okay, fair. Let's see. Next up, the Leviathan box came out.
Mm-hmm.
I give it very high rating.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start with talking about the thing that none of my friends are talking about. The book is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is a 350-page book that I will never get rid of.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is a fantastic. The paper is great. The book binding is great. The artwork is awesome. The artwork, some of the army pictures of their models are the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Smoke effects and lighting effects and incredible creativity in the paint schemes. Not just the boring Tau and Eldar paint schemes they tend to do. And there's a ton of lore in there for those that like it. I can't read 350 pages of lore. That's not my gear. But I did go through and skim some stuff. And I'm like, oh, Abaddon wants Vashtor to be a thing. Okay, well, that's some plot that I didn't know. Like, so it is just an incredible book. The box is an incredible value. I haven't put the models together yet, but several friends are saying they're push fit.
They are.
Don't even have to use glue.
Yeah.
Like, just an amazing box set. Just really, really great and good value for the dollars, I think.
Yeah, can I expand on two of those parts? The thing that actually struck me is how nice the actual box itself is. It's like really high quality cardboard that feels sturdy and will hold up well. Yeah. So just from a tactile experience picking it up, it was great. But I really want to spend a minute on what you said about the book, because when I picked it up, I was like instantly transported back to being a 13-year-old picking up my first 40K book. And in fact, I recognized some of the older, more penciled in pictures from that far back. And I'm sitting here and I have my newborn baby on the couch and my wife's there. And I'm like, honey, part of why I want I'm going to expose our kids to this hobby is that I remember when I could first start reading, and I wasn't, a good reader, but I could just pick up these books and get lost in them for hours, just looking at the picture. The writing is fine, but it's to like a third or fourth grade level. It's not hard reading. And you can just have this book and it can be a distraction for hours and hours and hours. And this book, to your point, yes, I'm not getting rid of it. It's wonderful. And I think that sort of childlike awe is something that would benefit all of us who are kind of frustrated about the fact that Wraith Knights exist.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a lot to say to that. I think you're spot on.
Yeah. It's just.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the rulebook, great. I agree with all of that. I also felt.
One more thing. The rules in the rulebook, while they start on page 298 or whatever, start on page 1 of the rules, and then page 2, and then page 3. So it's just, they can take that part of it and put it somewhere else, and there's not going to be, well, in the big rule book, it's page 498, but in the normal rule book, it's page 6, which was a thing in the past, and that's a great change.
Yeah, and we've already talked about how much we like the mission pack. I actually think the mission pack is the best. I know that some people are like, but it's Maelstrom! Meh. Okay, fine. Sure. But WTC did a version of Maelstrom for an entire edition. And no one sits around and says, well, the WTC is not competitive. No, like they understand. They made a version of it. They hot fixed it a little bit. But the Maelstrom cards aren't bad. No. I don't at any point think that randomness affects the game. I think it's great. And the cards are incredibly high quality. And there's a little fold up in the card.
Yeah, that was great.
That has the pregame stuff. And we had a few questions about how that interacted. My tournament was doing player place terrain, which I still am against, and I think the 10th edition rules are not written with player place terrain in mind. So
they're very much not.
Some weird things happen, but where that happens in the thing was helpful.
Yeah.
So another thing that came out is Forge World rules and points.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to let you talk about this, and then I will talk about this because I have a strong opinion.
Well, so there are some aggressively pointed models in Forge World, and a lot of the armies that have problems are probably exacerbated by some of the Forge World models. Now, a lot of those Forge World models are absolutely beautiful, and until and unless we see a balance pass, there's going to be a very interesting tension of, do I shell out hundreds of dollars for a model that will likely get nerfed? Will my TO allow me to proxy, or do I potentially play a subpar army? I am lucky enough to have played long enough that, like, I, for example, own a Scorpion Grav tank, which is awesome and not even as good as the Cobra. But yeah, the Forge World rules are really powerful.
Some of them.
Yeah, obviously, some Forge World rules are like, this is
10% of them. 10% of them.
And they're in the armies that, probably didn't need a lot of help, like Knights and Eldar.
All right. I don't actually think that there's that much for Eldar in there. We actually disagree on that.
I think that there are 2 or 3 things that, when the egregious stuff gets nerfed, are going to be very viable.
I'm not paying 400 points for an Eldar tank. I'm sorry.
400. No, I'm talking about like the Lynx and the Hornet.
Yeah, I just don't think the Hornet is significantly better than the Viper. I don't think that the
numbers 7 through 9.
Okay. Anywho, I hate Forge World. I never have stopped hating Forge World. I've never had a love for Forge World, so this is hard for me because I think that Forge World is actually nothing but bad for the game. So I'm going to be negative for a minute, and then I'll curve it around to some positivity.
I can bring it back.
I'm going to bring it back, Billy. I'm not just negative this morning.
The road is yours.
Okay, so we don't need a supplement of rules where some things are wildly broken and everything else is terrible, ever, under any circumstances. The game simply doesn't need that. Mm-hmm. Further, these models are incredibly expensive, and they're priced out of most people's budgets. Yeah. That when things are good, and I'm looking at you, the Caladius tank from before, and I'm looking at you, Demacaron, and I'm looking at you, Relic Contemptor Dreadnought. That when the things are good, we're going to talk about that, Billy. When the things are good, it is actually pay to win. Sure. The people that do that are either spending an egregious amount of money to abuse the game, or they are simply pirating the models, which I don't believe in. We're not talking about that today, but I don't think that China Cast is a good or moral thing. That's my opinion. We're not going to debate that today. So you've created this mess of a rule set where things are either wildly broken or terrible, and there's nothing in between. Mm-hmm. And the models are expensive, and they're hard to get, and they're constantly sold out. That drives me crazy. And yet, I feel bad about buying knockoffs. So add to that the Daimacaron. At the beginning of 9th edition, the Daimacaron is a giant Tyranid thing that was really, really good. And they sold out on it, and then they had more, and then they sold out on it, and then they had more, and they sold out on it. And lots of Tyranid players are playing with them, myself included. I myself bought multiple hundreds of dollars of plastic Tyranid kits and made my own. Mm-hmm. All out of GW parts. The Daimacaron is, in fact, the newest Forge World Tyranid datasheet that has been released. And it's legend.
Yeah, that was shitty.
What? Like, fine if it's bad. Fine if it's bad. You point it too high, whatever. At least it's still in the game. Saying this is the newest thing, and we know that 2 years ago we sold a buttload of these, and then removing it from the game is offensive. And it made me mad, and I ranted about it. I went and told my wife about it, who doesn't care at all. She doesn't care even a little bit, folks. And I went and told her about it. This is simply not okay. It's not a thing that needs to exist. And the tank that I like from the Eldar rules is the Lynx.
Mhm.
and it's like $150 US
Yeah.
for a 150 point tank.
Mhm.
Like it's $1 a point. Like it's for real expensive. So I just don't like this. I don't like that it exists, and I don't like what it does to competitive 40K. All that said, I don't know how you solve the problem if you're GW, because people do have these models, and people do want these models, and people do want to play with them. So I understand that GW has built them has worked themselves into a corner, but the rules are just as egregiously out of control back and forth as the normal rules. And so if we fact them at the same time, fine. But I don't see the value in having a rule set that's like, hey, here's an Eldar Revenant Knight. And it's really cool. It's slightly more durable. It's got another like 10 wounds that normal knights don't have. It's got some neat shooting, but not as much shooting as a normal knight. But don't worry, everybody. It's 1,100 points.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just stuff that it's like, well, this doesn't exist, right? Like just
mostly, although there is apparently, at least people are talking about, a Warhound Titan and a decent amount of guard.
That was at our RTT. You can have a Warhound Titan and 1,100 guard. Excuse me. You can have a Warhound Titan and 100 guardsmen.
I don't know if that's necessary. I don't know that that's good for the long term.
It's bad. I'm sorry. Like several armies killed the Warhound Titan on the first turn.
That doesn't.
The reality is that the game is not actually less deadly than it was.
No,
before.
It's more.
But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I'm trying very hard to be positive. So, for those that care about Forge World rules, congrats, they're out.
They are out. I came up in a time when those sorts of miniatures were for Apocalypse games only. I actually think a lot of 40K would be fixed if the super heavy class and flyers got put back to Apocalypse, and they built out decent Apocalypse rules. I think Forge World is really nice for hobby projects, and I think the game would largely be better if they were never competitive.
I agree. I also think that it's funny that these models are also awful to hobby on.
The resin is not. It used to be better before they got to making good plastic. The resin was better than the metal, but it's not anymore.
Okay, that's fair. Crusade rules came out. We don't cover those here because we don't care.
We want to care. We want one day to have the time in our lives when we can become Crusader players. Both of us, I know this about us, but we don't, so we can't. So we aren't.
I don't know.
You don't think it'd be fun to have like a giant campaign map on a wall somewhere and play regularly and build up your force and have that like added game on top of the tabletop game?
Sort of.
Oh, feels it's like my dream.
Feels a lot like narrative 40K to me.
Except in my imaginary world, everyone is the same sort of player I am that's min-maxing the crap out of it.
Okay.
And yeah, this is why I don't really do well in D&D. Anyway. Okay.
Did we miss anything that came out in the last week?
I don't believe so. I think that is everything that came out.
Okay. Well, let's go talk about tournaments then, and then we'll riff a bit at the end because we're not gonna have enough content here.
No, there were 2 tournaments that are at all worth talking about, and the amount that's worth talking about them is questionable.
What's winning?
So we reversed jobs today. I have an agenda, and Billy prepped the tournaments. So Billy, what are we talking about tournament-wise?
So there were really only 2 tournaments of any size that are worth talking about. There was the Boise Cup GT, and then there was something in Brittany, I believe northern France. Yes, the Open de Brittany. So the Boise GT house ruled that Fate Dice did not lead to crits and could not cause devastating wounds. And as a result, Eldar didn't win. Knights did. The next event that we're going to talk about flip-flop that, allowed devastating wounds to be there, and Eldar won. So you had at Boise, you had Adam Holland on Imperial Knights.
Hold on just a second, Billy. For those that are watching, Billy's camera is not updating, but we can still hear him. and it makes me feel very much like I'm talking to war correspondent Billy in the like. Here's the stock photo of Billy while we listen to him talk about the conflict that he's in. Okay, please continue.
One second. I'm going to try to come up with a good final picture for me to be stuck on.
No, it's updating now. So, there it goes. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's better.
Yeah. So we had Adam Holland, who brought Imperial Knights. He did bring a Vindicare Assassin because he's a funny man.
That's the same thing Hank took with his Knights when we played at the RTT.
Really? All right. Tell me, why would you bring a Vindicare?
Because it's a lone operative that can stand around and do stuff while shooting if you need him to, and the Knights don't have ability to do anything.
Okay, and it's probably it looks like it's the cheapest one of the assassins.
Also true. And I will tell you that I did charge that Vindicare Assassin with 7 acolytes, and it did win the fight against them.
I would believe that. Also, the thing is, Adam had 30 extra points, so he could have gotten one of the assassins that did something. Like going back to my comment about Blood Angels secretly have a lot of battle shock. The Calexis Assassin is a key part of that thing that I will be talking.
Okay. Oh, I think Billy's gone, folks.
Can you not hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Warden, Crusader, 2 Helvrins, and 5 Warglaves.
Basically what I played against with Hank. Very similar.
Ben Cromwell brought Necrons. The bunch of Hexmark destroyers and lords and scarab swarms and spiders, and so basically all of the locusts and heavy stuff, not a silver tide.
Fascinating. We should fill that in. People don't know what we're talking about. This is brand new. The Necrons can make a unit of Necron warriors that's impossible to. It's not impossible to kill, but it's extremely
very challenging. Yeah,
and it basically goes back to full strength after you shoot at it or punch it. It is obviously good, however, it doesn't really do damage, and it takes up a lot of points. The Lich Guard can also be incredibly hard to kill, but they don't really do enough damage for their points. So the Necron lists we have been seeing haven't been winning because they've been durable over the ability to play the game. Sounds like Ben took a different approach. Go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, just brought all of the stuff that moves fast and kill things. The locusts are, the guys on flying bases or with the spidery legs. So, and a lot of 1s and 3s of them. He did bring a monolith, so that's fun.
Yeah, I actually played against the monolith. The ability to just pick up a unit and teleport it, just because, is really, really neat, and it helps Necrons get out of combat, which they need help with.
At my RTT.
Oh, and just like that, Billy's gone. He is not here anymore. It is just me now. Hi. So the Knights are incredibly powerful, in part because of Towering. Towering says that Knights get to be true line of sight rather than caring about obscuring. In my game against Knights, I found that blisteringly maddening. It was extremely frustrating to constantly be down at the table trying to squint with one eyeball to see if the left shoulder of my aberrant that's hiding the best he can be seen by the antenna by the top of the knight. And it was rough. So you combine to that they still shoot, but they don't shoot as much as they used to. But the thing about them is they don't die now.
Which things?
Knights is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yes.
And so if you break out the toughness the way that they have, and then the baby Knights are T10, which is really good. But the big Knights are T13, which means the vast majority of armies are never wounding them on better than a 5+. Wounding things on a 5+ is wildly swingy. When I played a gazillion Gene Stealers for all those years, I would not put them into things where they were wounding on 5s unless I absolutely had to, because you can't count on that. Math does not get you there because it's a third, and that means that it can go crazy.
Yeah. So
I think that Knights are entirely too hard to kill, and the inability to hide from them is not acceptable. So Towering is a rule that people want to change, but in the meantime, Knights are S tier without any argument of any kind from anyone because they don't die and they shoot you no matter where you are.
The only thing in that I want to push back on is the terrain we used at my event really did let you hide from knights. Did you play that first floor just didn't have windows?
Correct. We did.
Does your terrain have little overhangs for like people to stand on and look out the second floor?
Not all of it, no. The problem we had was across table. The knights are so tall that most terrain has windows on the second or third floor, and it was just too easy to see the shoulder of something. And no matter how I moved things, and I'm dealing with units of 10 and 20, like, so it's not. Anyways, there was never a point in my game with Hank where I was able to hide a unit from being shot. Never a point.
Interesting. Just anecdotally from the event that I was at, that was not as much of a concern. That could be very idiosyncratic to the physical terrain pieces we were using, and that's not a good solution.
Yep.
I am just, again, anecdotally from very small data set, was surprised at how easy it was to hide from towering compared to my fears.
Okay. All right. So Towering won Boise Cup, second place Necrons. Where are we going after that?
After that, we're going to hope that you can still hear me.
I can.
That is wonderful. We're going to Brittany, France, the Open de Brittany.
Oh, we're not going to talk about who got third and fourth place at Boise Cup.
I thought you did when you lost me.
No.
Okay. Sorry guys, we're entertaining people, and that leads to challenges of my Thad Benedict, third place. He had knights. He did not have an assassin. Thad had a Canis Rex, a Crusader, a Paladin, 2 Helvrins, and 3 Warglaves.
Okay.
I think it's nice that Canis is good. For some reason, Knights players love Canis, and Canis was terrible, and now Canis is good. I like miniatures to be good that people want to be good. I think that is just a good thing. So that is the best way that I can talk about Knights and say good things about them.
Okay.
And then in fourth place, we had Hunter Seams, who brought Tau, Shadow Sun, Cold Star Commander, Crisis Commander, Firesight Team, 2 Breachers, 2 Devilfishes, Broadside unit, 2 big Crisis units, a Ghost Keel, some Stealth Suits, and some Vespids. So actually just sort of a Tau list that you're broadly used to. Fisher Fury, just given new Fisher Fury, for those who don't know, are Breacher teams in Devilfish. It was a absolute terror, my understanding of 7th edition, is a direction that Tau players are at least going to explore. Now with the everyone can jump out of transports after they move, that is an interesting thing. One of the very valid complaints about early 10th is that punching is bad and shooting is good. Well, in that world, Tau just love to exist. So now is a good time for Tau players to do some exploration, because some of your apex predators, armies that want to run up and punch you in the face, are taking naps.
Yep. And I could talk. That's close combat's actually my key issue with 10th edition.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk for the next 10 minutes about what they messed up with close combat, but I'm not going to. That's all. I'm just not going to. Next tournament is the V10 Open de Brittany, and it's going to take me a moment to get there. But Brittany, France is a fun place that I would love to visit one day, preferably not from a landing vessel in World War II. And now I have to figure out how to spell this. And my phone is angry at me. V10. Colin, do you have other thoughts while I do this? Really hard not to rant about. Don't rant about close combat. Don't rant about close combat. Don't rant about close combat.
So, all right. What the thing with close combat is that
don't do it. No, don't do it. You don't want to unleash this dragon.
I don't think it's as bad as everyone is saying.
Oh, you're so wrong. Oh my God, you're so wrong.
The way the rules...
Okay, fine.
Go for it. Go for it.
Look, almost everything that does close combat in any army I own is now strength 4 or strength 3. Worthless.
This part of it is accurate.
Worthless. If you have a strength 3 weapon, you are garbage tier and you will not do anything but stand around and take wounds. You do not have a gun. You do not have punching. Strength 3 is, there's a lot of elite infantry that are T6 and higher. Tons of it. That you are simply going to end up not being able to deal with. The entire Custodes army is immune to strength 3 basically. So, strength 3, terrible. Strength 4, not much better. All of the Eldar close combat is 3 and 4 pretty much. All of the Drukhari close combat is 3 and 4 pretty much. All of the Genestealer cult close combat, some of it's 5. Most of it's 3 and 4. They basically said, we're going to make everything in the game, a lot of the things in the game have higher toughness, but we're not going to change default close combat weapons. So like what you end up with is a unit of 10 witches with Lilith, which is like a 300-point unit, 250-point unit. And it can go into a unit of like intercessors and kill like 2. Like it's wicked bad because it's not just the strength. They've also reduced AP. So they've made it so the close combat doesn't hit as hard as shooting. That's actually not okay because the risk of doing close combat is exceptionally higher. For one, Overwatch is a massive problem for the game. Hank took the knight that has 3d6 with AP flamer shots at 18 inches. So that in the Genestealer Cult game, I just couldn't deep strike in within 18 inches of that knight, or I lost whatever unit I had there. That's just a problem. Also with close combat, just like always, you can just miss your charge. And there's a lot less modifiers to charging than there ever were before. Rapid Ingress is cool, but you're still going to have to get in front of guns at some point in your Rapid Ingress turn before you get to them. The Overwatch is a neat idea. I'll give them credit. It is a neat idea. And I like that they're trying to make the game more interactive when it's not your turn. But against Hank, Overwatch was literally just Hank getting an extra shooting phase every turn. He rolled plenty of 6s. So you have close combat that doesn't do anything. And it's high risk. And on top of all of that, it also doesn't hold things in combat. You can't try-point anything.
By the rules, actually, you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, people just walk through you.
Yeah, they do take a desperate escape test when they do it, but yes.
Right. So people can walk through you. If you're in combat with a vehicle or a monster, you can still be shot by other things.
Not if you're infantry.
Okay. Then I was just wrong on that.
Yeah.
But the vehicle can still shoot you and can still shoot out from combat.
Yes, that is correct.
So
but only the vehicle can shoot you.
Okay. I was wrong about that. Fine. So anyways, that's my rant about close combat, and it is not easily fixed. It is not easily. It's not just done.
Co-signing all of that, I thought your concern was at the core mechanics of how things move, and I just think that personally those arguments are overblown. It's just a different set of absolutely counterintuitive things we have to learn, as opposed to the old set of counterintuitive things that we knew. That's my point on that.
I like pilot and consolidate actually, except I think there's one line in the close combat rules that fixes everything for me in the actual, not how bad Overwatch is and how bad the models are that close combat, but like the actual core close combat rules. I think the key is to don't say they have to base if they can, and the reason for that. And the reason for that is that it creates mandatory movement that unpositions, that puts your close combat out of position, and means that you can't in close combat in cover a lot of the time. You can't actually control your movement hardly at all, because if you're getting ready to charge a unit of 5 dudes with big bases and you roll a 12 on that charge, sorry, you don't get to decide how your units go.
The irony of yes, the irony of a 12 being bad a lot of the time is funny. I have not had enough practice doing it, so you've had more. You're probably right. It leads to the counterintuitive thing of moving the furthest away thing, because it has the fewest options, into the spot that is most disadvantageous for basing, leading to you then having more options on everything else. It's counterintuitive. It's silly. It feels like you still have weird control over where things go in a counterintuitive way, just like you used to.
I don't feel that way.
Okay.
I feel locked in on rails with where my stuff can go. I feel like I get into combat and I don't get decisions because
And that's bad.
if you can base, you base. If you
Right,
can
you
base,
just make it so you can't.
if you can base going the opposite direction of where you want to go, you have to do it.
Only, or you have to not move the model.
The unit. Read it.
No, yes, read it. You do. You may do the move, and if you do the move, you have to do it this way. You don't actually have to do the move.
It says you may pile in the unit. It does not say you may move each model. But Billy and I don't need to argue about this. I'm probably wrong. So
yeah, this one I just actually know you are.
Yeah. I actually have a 3-minute hard stop, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that Britannia tournament. So
it's not on BCP. They allowed Eldari to do all of the Eldari things in Eldari 1.
Okay. Summarized.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So with the close combat rant having been handled, by the way, not piling in means you're not. If Billy's correct, and I will defer that he's probably right, it means that if you don't pile your model in, it's not fighting because of the way engagement range works. A lot of the time.
Yeah.
So you're deciding between, do I want this unit out of position and fighting or not fighting? I just don't like it. I just don't like it, Billy. I'm sorry. If they change that one line, I think close combat movement is fine.
I broadly agree. I want close combat to be better. I will bang my head against the wall trying to make armies that use close combat because that's where I find the fun in this game. I would imagine something there changes because it's just skewed too badly right now. Absolutely.
Well, like Aberrants are really good in their close combat unit, but they're really good because their durability is wildly unacceptable.
And because they infiltrate, and if you get the defender role, you put them right in the middle of the board, and then you charge your entire opponent's army because it's Dawn of War, and they can reach the back of the backfield.
Yep.
Yeah, that happened.
That's all true. I don't have an argument about any of that. Okay, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm sorry that I am struggling with positivity. I know that the show is about positivity.
Colin, you were so much more positive than you're giving yourself credit for.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week, hopefully to start tournament coverage in earnest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that there will be tournaments to cover. Hopefully we'll also have some balance to talk about between now and next Tuesday. I really want the Thanos meme now. Everything in balance. So for this week at 40K, he's Billy, and I'm Colin because someone absolutely has to be, and so it might as well be me. And we will be back next week. Bye, everybody.
Yep. Bye.
We'll miss you
terribly.